the memory changed, the belief changed, the emotional response to the belief changed, meaning no more anxiety. When there was no more anxiety, the behavior brought about by the anxiety went away, and she was able to have, relationships without sabotaging them. I had a client thinking about disempowered. She came to me with a typical pattern of relationship sabotage. She was, in her 30s, and her pattern was she would, had a boyfriend for a period of time, some number of months, and then she would, text him or call him before texting was big, and just, be on this guy like 10 times a day. Now, you can imagine the man, was like, oh, that girl's psycho, whatever, and ended up dumping her. So she had this, this trail of littered dead relationships behind her, largely because she had this fear of abandonment. And, she had been in therapy. She had tried taking anti-anxiety meds because whenever she didn't hear from the guy she was dating, it wasn't like she was thinking he was cheating. She just felt anxious. And the anxiety went away when she reached out and heard from him. So by the way, it's very similar to the flasher. He felt anxious. He felt icky. He felt this urge until he engaged in that, behavior of flashing and masturbating and all of that. So that was his drug experience. In this case, her drug, similar to social media and the dopamine and everything, was finding out, connecting with that man. Long story short, too late. Basically, there was this, this had been an issue in her adult life. But we did a process of accessing the feeling and then leading to the memory that trained her to feel that way. And her memory was when she was 4 years old or so. She got separated from one of her parents at a supermarket or something, and she remembers crying hysterically. But it was probably only a few minutes, and then, nothing really harmful happened physically, and she was reunited, and that was it. Well, I said, I think you may have learned that if you're dependent on someone, don't take your eyes off them. Because for a child, again, that's very self-protective. But for an adult, that's really a problem. And so she had a belief due to, low self-worth and a few other issues unrelated to that experience, that she needed this man for X, Y, and Z reasons, whoever he was that year. And so because she was dependent emotionally on him and she was attached, his absence created anxiety. And so we changed the memory in some capacity using NLP and memory reconsolidation and these kind of things. And whereas at first she was remembering that memory and felt very, uncomfortable, within minutes, she was fine. And the pattern changed immediately. She no longer had any anxiety because the belief that she would be unsafe without the person she needs changed, because the belief was supported by the evidence of the memory. So when the evidence changed, the memory changed, the belief changed, the emotional response to the belief changed, meaning no more anxiety. When there was no more anxiety, the behavior brought about by the anxiety went away, which was texting, calling, keeping tabs. She felt calm, and she was able to have, relationships without sabotaging them. I mean, it kind of makes you wonder how many cases of relationship sabotage. I don't like the word sabotage because that's a long-term perspective. From the short-term perspective, it's self-preservation. Long-term perspective, it's self-sabotage. She was protecting herself by keeping tabs on the man, even if ultimately she destroyed the relationship that way. But the pattern was something that it had just become normal for her. And she looked back and said, well, I remember that experience. It wasn't like it was buried. She just said, but I was a kid, nothing bad happened, and it was like a few minutes. I don't know why that would affect me. And I had to explain that children are much more vulnerable to upsetting experiences than adults.
That explains so clearly about how a lot of this stuff is generated from childhood experiences that, again, as adults, we can kind of like look at it and think, oh, come on, really? because of, a separation at a grocery store. And we kind of instinctively call bullshit on it. But the way you've just described it makes it infinitely easier to understand.